Yo, what's up? Welcome back to this channel called How to Drum and Bass. My name is Jesse. As you know, it is my mission to teach you awesome things about drum and bass. And today I want to talk about something that I personally think is very, very cool. A lot of what we do on this channel is focused on big leads and basses, but sometimes what really defines a track is the atmosphere or the intro or other elements than just the main lead elements that carry the track. And what we're going to talk about today is the distorted guitar of one of the newer Metrik songs called Awake, which I think is just incredible. I mean, if you click this thumbnail, then you probably like Metrik, and I think we can agree that he is one of the most forth-striding producers right now and has been for years. He keeps bringing new styles and elements and a lot of stuff from rock music and maybe sort of that metal-ish infused like guitar and drum sounds from genres that, you know, have a lot to contribute to drum and bass, which is super awesome. And one of the things that he brought was this very distorted guitar in Awake, which we're going to talk about today, which really, like I said, carries, I think, the track because it sets the tone for the entire atmosphere, and just this sound has created, I think, everything that you're going to anticipate in the rest of the song. So anyway, enough fanboying. Let's see what we're actually talking about. And as always, of course, you can download this preset, everything that we're doing right now, in the link below, so go and do that. I will say this specific sound, but then with lots more ways to modulate it, is also a part of the Drum and Bass Essentials Serum preset pack, which you can also check out in the link in the description. All right, let's dive in. So the original sounds like this, and we're talking really about the very beginning. Very eerie. Just so you don't get confused, I put a little bit of a bass boost on this original just so you could hear the reese, because we're going to talk about that in a minute, and it's just a little bit more defined like that. But yes, what we're hearing here is a big reese and then this distorted guitar, and what we're going to make today is something that's very, very similar, which together with also a reese sounds like this. Very cool. I'm specifically excited about this one, mostly because this is actually a really cool sound and it carries some techniques that we can learn from, I think, a lot, and, you know, that just make way for a lot of creative thinking. So let's see really quickly what we've got going on here, and then we're going to recreate it. So there's a bit of post-processing. Most of that is actually just to distort the sound further. Most of the sound comes from this Serum patch, which we'll see right here is two waves that are playing 4 octaves apart. And most of what's really going on here, you can see there's a little bit of FMing, but that actually doesn't really do that much. It's a very filtered distortion with a super long tail from delay, and then the compressor brings out that delay, and then there's a big reverb. And this is actually what we're going to do today is very similar to when you would have an actual guitar, an electric guitar that's put into a pretty heavy amplifier that has a long tail. So let's create it from scratch, and we're going to dive all into what that means. All right, so I have a empty patch here. I've got the notes, which if you want the notes, you can download the MIDI file in the link in the description as well. But as you can see right here, we have the same notes with an empty channel. Not that interesting. So what we want to do, we want to start out by getting two waves that are a little bit opposite of each other in the sense that they are 4 octaves apart. So we got one at -2 and one at +2. And then for the first wave, we could grab a sine wave. That would be the bass. However, since we're trying to make something very distorted, we should try and grab something that looks like a sine wave, but a distorted sine wave. And one of the options for that is one of the Monster wavetables. For example, the Monster 1, if you cycle through the wavetable position, it actually quite looks like, yeah, like a distorted sine wave or maybe a distorted triangle wave or something like that. Especially somewhere around here, it looks like a distorted sine wave. So that works very well. The second one is going to form the bass. This is, and actually just, we have to turn this around. The sine wave should be at +2 octaves, and the other one should be at -2. The reason for that is because we're going to pick a very harmonically rich wave here. So a saw wave will do, but once again, it's going to make a better and a little bit distorted sound that we're looking for if we choose a very harmonic wave that isn't as simple as a square wave. So what we're going to do right now is we're gonna start out with the subby where is it? Under analog, the subby saw. And we'll cycle through some wavetables later so you can see sort of what the effect is, because it doesn't really matter that much as long as this wavetable B that's going to form the grunge and the bass of it is harmonically rich. And you can see that here. It is very harmonically rich, right? So, okay. So that doesn't sound particularly exciting just yet. What we need to do is we need to start adding distortion. And we're going to go and grab one of the most brutal ones, which is the distortion 2. But what we want to do is we want to post filter it. Now what this means is basically that it's going to take the signal, apply all the saturation, and then put a filter on it in the post. You should know that even though this looks like, you know, a very sharp cutoff, it doesn't mean that nothing up here comes through. You can still hear those highs. So that's good to know as well. And we're going to bring out this volume later with a compressor. So maybe actually we just do that right now already. Let's get it on multiband. Let's put that gain up here a little bit. And let's take away some of these lows here. Something like that. And let's up that release time as well, so that it keeps that compression going in the tail that we're going to create, which we'll see about in a minute. Next, let's also add a sub. Let's add a sine wave at -1. Mostly because this sine wave is going to add a little bit of tonality, but it's also going to interfere with the other waves, causing some more grunge later. Let's add a little bit more volume. Let's go and add this volume right here. And let's also start adding some hyper and dimension. We want this sound to be particularly wide. So we're going to put the mix up a little bit of the dimension. We're going to put that size down a lot though. And now we can already start hearing that it's interfering with each other. This is because both hyper, but mostly dimension, they add slightly delayed signals. And what happens is we get constructive and destructive interference, and that's causing it to be less pure. Which is starting to sound like what we want. Let's see if we can change this wavetable position if it matters anything too. So yeah, we want to keep it in that lower half, otherwise we get a little bit too much of those sort of chirpy type of highs. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to basically drown it in reverb. That sounds about right. And that does a nice job of actually washing out a lot of the distortion that we're going to create in a minute later. All right, now what we want to do is we want to start working with the envelope. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this down here. And we're actually going to work with the release button here. And this is going to be very cool. I'm not sure if you're going to hear it right now, but you can see we're dragging this out. What that means is the note is going to sustain for a little bit longer. So, for example... And what's going to happen there is as we play multiple notes over each other, there is going to be more and more constructive interference of that very distorted sound. You can hear that right now, which is kind of cool. It gives that sort of very eerie background, almost droning that's going on. If we take it out, it's so much cleaner. And now it's very, very washed out. So this is a control that we can actually use to determine the level of, let's call it the grunge of the sound. Super cool. I think maybe I want to up the threshold here a bit. All right. Now, what we're going to do as well is we're going to add a delay, because what we want is we want that tail to be super long and loud, and you know, we want it to really get atmosphere. So yeah, let's just grab this one. And to make sure that, you know, we get a little bit of stereo stuff going on, we can actually put this on ping pong, which I think will do just a nice trick of putting some more of these tonalities in the stereo field. If you've got headphones on, you can hear that now as well. It's nicer. Hey, quick break. If you're enjoying these videos and you like my style of teaching and you've been feeling like you want to get more into sound design, specifically for drum and bass, then maybe you want to check out my brand new online course called Drum and Bass Sound Design Mastery. It's an absolutely massive course with over 150 videos spanning 14 hours of content where we teach you two things. In the first half, we teach you everything there is to know about synthesizing sound in Serum. And in the second part, we show you how to use that knowledge to create the most popular sounds in drum and bass. I guess you can see it like the ultimate masterclass of drum and bass sound design. So if that sounds like something you could be interested in, check the link in the description below to find out more about this awesome course. All right, let's get on with the video. Now let's see if it matters to put retrig mode on the hyperdimension too. Yeah, okay, nice. So the only thing that's left is something that we can actually do that's pretty cool. So let's say that you were playing a guitar. You might have seen that little thingy on the side of the guitar. I think it's called the wah-wah. And basically what that does is it introduces some sort of tremolo, and we can have a little bit of that if we want, if we choose to. So what we could do is we could pick one of these, and we could put an LFO on the frequency here, and just make it move a little bit. And we could put this, you know, at some BPM, and keep it on off. So you can hear that it, that's why it's called the wah-wah, I think. It's giving a little bit more instability to the sound, which I think personally is pretty cool. I think maybe this is a little bit too much, so what we can do is we can up this smooth button here, which will basically just make the LFO a little bit less sharp. And maybe this is actually too quick. We could even put it on BPM mode and just put it back at, like, let's say, quarter note. Of course, this is not mandatory. All right, so now what we want to do, since this is a plucky sound, we want to make it a little bit more snappy, right? And so two tricks that we can do for that is we can grab an LFO and we can really quickly make something like this. And we're going to insert a bit of clickiness. So one of them is going to be on the noise oscillator. We're just going to grab, I like using the bright white for this. We're going to put that on the level of that so that it's going to introduce really with every, it's almost like a guitar, like you hear that strum going a bit. We are, however, going to put it on direct out. Yeah, so that we get that. And we can choose the speed of that. I think this is probably fine. And then in the matrix, we're also going to grab LFO2 and we're going to put it on the master tuning. And this is something we really want to modulate. So let's put this up and let's also make sure that it doesn't go two ways. Otherwise, it's going to sound really weird. And of course, we need to put back the oscillators for this to hear what that does. So this is obviously too harsh. That's not what we want. So we can use this this modulation of the output here. And of course, this one we do want to put on trigger mode. So let's turn this down a little bit more even. And we can hear that that's noise is actually very loud. So let's put it somewhere here maybe. So now we have a nice soft little transient in there. And we can modulate however harsh we want that to sound, right, by just using this. Cool. So we're going to add a whole shit ton more of distortion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reel this tail in a bit, and we'll see why later, because it gets pretty crazy pretty fast. Now, the last little touch is that this sounds quite bright. So we're going to do two things. We're going to put some FM from B on oscillator A, and it's not really going to matter that much. But it's just going to scrunch up a little bit more of those high tones and make them a little bit less piercing. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to introduce a filter. And I actually also want to have that on the sub. And let's make sure that we have a 24 filter so that we filter out a lot of those, a lot of those highs. Nice. I think we're getting very close. So what's left now is to see how fat and big and wide we can get the sound. So let's start with OTT, of course. And so we can just adjust a few settings, to sort of make sure that we get the distribution of frequencies that we want. All right, and then we can start doing all kinds of cool things. So how about we introduce an amp? This is actually what is used on guitars. This is a software emulation of that. And let's say that we grab, maybe the blue setting of that. That's obviously way too much, but let's turn down that dry wet. So that can be nice. And in a similar fashion, in an attempt to make the sound a little bit wider, we can use the free wider plugin from Infected Mushroom. Now, you do have to be a little bit careful with this because it makes things sound a bit tinny sometimes, and it sounds cool when you're doing it, but then in the mix, it doesn't sound so cool anymore. But I think this definitely adds a lot of cool roominess to it. I'm gonna turn off this OTT really quickly because it's given us that really weird, crazy sound, but we can add it on back later. So let's look at various different types of distortion that we can do. So we can actually go and grab something like Shaper Box, and we can go and target distortion in a particular band, right? So we select a band here, and let's make sure that we have a very steep, so that basically what this means is just like a filter that really only this band gets distorted. Otherwise, you have a little bit of bleed out into the sides here. And let's just grab, maybe like a hard clip and just up it a little bit there. Ooh, makes it very bright immediately. So yeah, let's put it somewhere here. That's maybe a bit much. Let's tile that down. But somewhere around these frequencies is kind of where some of that grunge seems to be. Put it down a bit. But we can play with that later. And we can see actually maybe it's cooler to add the amp after the shaker box because the amp goes over the whole signal and the shaker box was selective. So that's something we can do. We can put the OTT back on there. I think the noise transient maybe works a little bit better when it's not on direct out, but that's all up to you. And so then, yeah, last but not least, what you can do is you can go ahead and apply some EQing, right? To see, we can see that some frequencies here might be missing. And then another cool thing that you can do, so we want this to be, wide and very atmospheric, and that means we want to also play with the stereo field. So we can actually go into another EQ. Let's cancel this one out. And let's go into the mid-side mode, right? And let's go to the sides by clicking this little S over here. And then we can set these, one of these to be a shelf. And we can make sure that whatever's playing sort of from 1K and above gets a little bit of a boost in the side of our ears, which makes it a lot more perceived width. And so now we can hear that, I think we've mostly got the sound. Now we want to go back into this serum patch. This happens quite a lot when you've done the post-processing. You want to go back and change the bass a bit. And we can hear now that this tail is definitely causing a lot of distortion. And so another thing that we can play with to sort of have the pronunciation of the notes a bit different is we can change this slope. Very cool. So that's basically how to create a sound like this. And there are many parameters here to tweak. You can definitely, mess around with the distortion. You can apply some EQing here and there, but you can also go ahead and change some of the wavetables. So for example, what I just said is we needed a harmonically rich wavetable for the subby saw, and people stress a lot over what wavetable to pick. But actually the reality is that when you're doing heavy processing, especially when there's, some wave shaping going on and lots of distortion, sometimes it doesn't really matter that much. And so it's more the nuance of that gets determined by the wavetable. So we can see that. Let's hop over to these spectral wavetables and let's try some of these Reese messes. So that works too. So we can actually pick almost any of these spectral wavetables if we find the right part of the wavetable. See? And so what that means is by changing around the serum patch a little bit, but keeping the post-processing relatively the same, we almost have an unlimited amount of distorted electric guitars. Now, if that isn't really fucking cool, then I don't know what is. So definitely go and get that preset and go and make some really cool music with that. All right, guys, that was the video for today. I hope that you liked it. Let me know if you enjoy hearing more about these kinds of sounds as well, rather than just like the fat drops and shit like that, because I certainly enjoy teaching about it and making stuff like this. So let me know what you think about that. If I helped you a little bit, then consider helping me by pressing that subscribe button, or if you've already subscribed, press the like button, or any engagement like a comment, whatever. It really helps me put out videos to more people like you and make people make more drum and bass, which ultimately is all that we want. All right. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.